If money stopped being the problem tomorrow, most people think their spending would become smarter. In reality, it often becomes louder. The same forces that drained your account at $40,000 a year can drain it at $400,000, just with nicer lighting. The difference between people who end up quietly wealthy and people who end up loudly stressed is rarely intelligence, it's purchasing philosophy. It's whether you treat money like a set of costumes for strangers or a set of tools for your future. Today, I want to walk you through 10 things I wouldn't buy, even if I had the money, especially if I had the money, and what I do instead. This isn't about deprivation. It's about refusing to spend on things that rent your identity, steal your attention, or create a monthly tax with better marketing than math. The first thing I wouldn't buy is a brand new luxury car on a long loan. If I can afford it, why not? Because a car is the loudest example of price versus cost. Price is the number on the window. Cost is everything the car will consume for as long as it sits in your driveway. Insurance premiums that climb with the badge, registration, tires that cost double because the wheels got wider for aesthetics, premium fuel, maintenance that requires a boutique service bay, interest on an 84-month loan that outlives the feeling you felt on delivery day, and the attention tax of anxiety in parking lots in winter storms. New luxury depreciates like a secret. A reliable, well-kept used car with a term shorter than its life buys the same ability to get to work and to loved ones, with less drama, less required ego maintenance, and more cash flow available for ownership of productive assets. If I want a taste of the fancy driving experience, I rent for a weekend or I take the train and let the city be the luxury. Attention is the rarest asset I own. I won't spend it on a machine whose job is transportation. The second thing I wouldn't buy is more house than my calendar can carry. A big mortgage looks like ambition. Sometimes it's just a roof that eats your future. The oversized home sells you a story about entertaining, about rooms that will become studios and gyms and libraries. Often they become dust collectors with a heating bill. The true cost of a too-big house isn't only the mortgage, it's taxes, insurance, utilities multiplied by square footage, maintenance that never ends, furnishings for rooms you don't use, and the silent cost of distance if that square footage pushes you farther from work, school, or the people you actually see. The house that gets you ahead isn't the one that photographs best, it's the one that lets you sleep while your savings rate quietly climbs. Right sizing buys oxygen. Oxygen buys patience. Patience buys better decision-making everywhere else in your life. I want a home that functions like a workshop, produces food, rest, and gathering, not a museum that performs identity for visitors I don't host. The third thing I wouldn't buy is an annual spot in the upgrade parade. Phones, laptops, watches on reflex. I love good tools. I love speed, but I do not love renting novelty. The real cost of the yearly flagship habit isn't just the price delta after resale, it's the cognitive churn of setup, the accessories that mysteriously never fit the new ports, the insurance that looks cheap until you file a claim, and the time you donate to a learning curve you didn't need. My rule is simple. I replace tools when they stop serving my work, not when marketing declares a new color. I skip first-gen hardware until the kinks are known. I buy the smallest spec that does my job well, and I ride it until the software or the battery refuses. The hours I don't spend migrating photos are hours I can use to ship something billable or to cook dinner without paying surge pricing for my own hunger. The fourth thing I wouldn't buy is clutter storage for things I should remove. The storage industry is booming because it sells us permission to postpone decisions. The unit is cheap in month 1, it's expensive in year 3. The real cost isn't the monthly fee, it's the mental drag of objects that still own you from across town, and the way clutter at home recruits purchases to organize clutter that never should have survived. I want a house where every shelf holds things that earn their spot by getting used. If I'm tempted to rent space for something I might use someday, I borrow, I digitize, I sell, or I let it go and choose the pride of stewardship over the anxiety of possession. Owning fewer, better maintained tools makes me feel wealthier than a room full of maybe. The fifth thing I wouldn't buy is subscriptions that mimic identity without delivering outcomes. It's easy to collect memberships that promise you'll be the kind of person who reads more, cooks better, travels stylishly, or optimizes your health. The monthly is modest, the landing page aspirational. 3 months later, you have logins you don't use and a card that keeps whispering just a little. Instead, I run a quarterly rebuy test. I read each recurring charge out loud and ask, would I buy this again today at this price? If the answer isn't a clean yes, I cancel or pause and route the savings to sinking funds with names I like saying out loud: travel trains, tires and service, gifts, December tickets, or to a small skill stack fund I actually use for books, courses, or tools I finish. I'll buy participation. I won't pay a subscription to rehearse a fantasy of myself. The sixth thing I wouldn't buy is extended warranties and protection plans on items I can afford to replace. The pitch is fear with a smile. The math is rarely on your side. For consumables and mid-priced gadgets, self-insuring is cheaper. I keep a replacement/repair line inside my sleep fund and spend a little on maintenance: cases, screen protectors, descaling the kettle, cleaning the lint trap, because maintenance is an investment with absurd returns. Where protection matters, health insurance matched to how I use care, term life if someone depends on my income, disability insurance because my earning power funds everything else, an umbrella policy over home and auto. I pay for real coverage, not checkout counter reassurance. Insure what you cannot afford to lose. For the rest, buy quality once, maintain it, and let small losses be paid from cash, not fear. The seventh thing I wouldn't buy is a timeshare or vacation club contract, even at a steep discount on the promise of forever memories. Timeshares sell predictability in exchange for obligation. You don't just buy nights, you buy fees that rise, calendars that don't match your life, resale markets that punish regret, and a subtle pressure to travel to the same kind of place because the contract says so. Travel is one of the joyful parts of money. I want it to remain flexible. I'd rather build a tiny travel sink that drips every payday into a fund and use that cash for off-peak tickets, rented apartments with kitchens, and trains that let me read. If I crave community, I visit the same city and stay with the same host twice. That gives me roots without the paperwork. The best souvenir of a trip is not an obligation. It's a memory paid for once. The eighth thing I wouldn't buy is a room's worth of furniture all at once. A showroom solves a feeling, emptiness with alone, but rooms chosen in an afternoon rarely match Tuesday. They match lighting and staging. The hidden cost is that you end up designing your life around pieces that looked good together in a warehouse. I furnish the way I invest, slowly, with purpose, and with a bias towards standard parts that can be fixed. One good table that hosts dinners and work, a chair that doesn't punish my back, a lamp that delivers light instead of mood marketing, solid wood, real fabric, used pieces that have already proven they can survive a winter. I let the room tell me what it wants after I live in it. Patience is free. It spends like money. The ninth thing I wouldn't buy is complex financial products I can't explain back in plain language. If I need diagrams to understand the fees, the guarantees, the lockups, and what has to go right for me to win, I'm not buying access. I'm buying opacity. Wealth hides in boring ownership of thousands of businesses via low-cost index funds and in cash buffers that turn emergencies into errands. There are good uses for insurance and for annuities in narrow, specific cases, but complexity is not a substitute for a plan. If the pitch leans on tax magic and only for sophisticated investors, my answer is disciplined boredom. I will be wealthy at a pace my nervous system can carry. I'd rather be the person who keeps contributing on dates than the person who bought a magic beanstalk that needed a perfect weather pattern to sprout. The 10th thing I wouldn't buy is a lifestyle that needs me to become a new person by Monday. This is the category that swallows the most money with the softest hands. It includes hobby kits that require a spare room and a new identity, wardrobes for jobs I don't have yet, elaborate meal plans that ship guilt with the garnish, high-maintenance decor that needs weekend dusting crews, and social calendars that require a new outfit for every photograph. The test is simple. If the purchase requires me to change my routine to keep it from becoming clutter, it's a no. I buy tools that fit my week as it exists. I design rooms that make good choices easier. I want to be proud of stewardship, not addicted to acquisition. Let's step into real rooms so these choices don't float like slogans. A friend of mine earned a promotion and celebrated with a lease that looked like a raise. 0 down, just a few hundred a month for 84 months, maintenance included for a bit. A badge that performed the moment. Parking became a negotiation with anxiety, insurance leapt, premium fuel arrived as a subscription, the car demanded a garage that now demanded a neighborhood farther from work. The month got louder. 2 years later, he sold the costume, bought a boring used machine that started every morning, and rerouted the freed cash into a sleep fund and investing on payday. The weirdest part of his story is this: his confidence increased when his badge decreased because his money started doing something measurable off camera. Another friend bought a large house because her parents' story said square footage equals success. The mortgage was manageable, but the real bill arrived in the form of ladders, paint, bigger couches, a second vacuum that had less to do with cleanliness and more to do with geography, and a commute that converted dinners into delivery. 3 years later, she moved closer to her life. The smaller home didn't shrink her. She seemed to expand in it. She cooked, she slept, she stopped needing a Saturday to recover from Tuesday. Her savings rate existed without trying. The house was no longer the main character. Her days were. A couple I know loves travel, so a timeshare presentation sounded like romance. What they were really being sold was a narrow version of travel. Specific weeks, specific rooms, rising fees, and a resale market that punishes revision. They passed. Instead, they opened a tiny travel sink named Trains and Picnics and dripped a small automatic amount into it every payday. The sink made spontaneity feel lawful. They booked off-peak nights with kitchens, rode transit like locals, and discovered that the feeling they wanted wasn't a tiled bathroom with a view, it was coffee on a balcony they paid for once. A colleague of mine wanted a grown-up living room. He bought the showroom. The room looked perfect for 4 days. On day 5, it demanded coasters, throws, and a style of sitting that did not match his friends. The furniture was durable in photographs and fragile in life. He sold most of it at a loss, kept one solid table, and then assembled a room slowly from pieces that earned their keep by surviving movie nights, toddlers, and pasta sauce. The result didn't trend, it lasted. His bank account got quieter because his weekends stopped being staging sessions. A client of mine who earns well kept saying yes to subscriptions because each one was small. Streaming bundles for one show, cloud storage in duplication because organizing files wasn't fun, a smart kitchen that demanded updates, a gym across town that required a commute and a second outfit. The monthly total was a car payment. We ran the rebuy test. Half died without pain. The money flowed to specific sinks, tires and service, December tickets, gifts, travel trains. For the first time, December stopped pretending to be an emergency. He didn't feel deprived, he felt wise. Someone will ask, isn't this just being cheap? No, frugality is getting what you value by spending less of what matters. Money, time, attention. Cheapness is reflexive. It says no to joy and yes to clutter. The choices I'm describing buy more of the good life by refusing to finance the loud life. A boring car buys bandwidth for a thrilling trip. A right-sized home buys a kitchen that cooks. A steady, low-cost portfolio buys sleep you can't flex on the internet. A room furnished slowly buys posture and pride. A canceled subscription buys a real hobby. That's not cheap. That's design. If you like ceremonies, here's one you can finish tonight to inoculate your week against the 10 traps. Write a one-page spending policy in your own words. You're not writing a budget. You're writing a constitution for purchases that try to sell you identity. Mine has 3 lines I read before anything big. I buy the smallest that does the job, the simplest that can be serviced, and the most standard that can be shared. I replace tools when they stop serving my work, not when marketing adds a new color. I do not buy storage for things I should remove. Tape that where your hand reaches for a card. Then, on your calendar, schedule a quarterly rebuy session with a mug and a chair. Read each subscription out loud and decide like a board, not like a consumer. Move shopping apps 2 screens deep on your phone and put your reading, notes, or investing app on page 1 as a cue. Keep 2 10-minute dinners and their ingredients in your house at all times, so a bad Wednesday doesn't bill you $60 for chicken. And build a tiny travel sink with a name that makes you grin. Even $20 a payday turns "we should" into "we can." There's a quieter layer under all of this: stewardship. Wealth that lasts doesn't announce itself. It behaves. It shows up as tools that work because you maintained them, a car that starts because you didn't ask it to be a costume, a roof that lets you breathe because you sized it for oxygen, a calendar that delivers rest because you designed your weekends on purpose, and money that moves on dates without needing a pep talk from your mood. When you refuse to buy the 10 things I've warned you away from, you're not declaring war on pleasure. You're declaring allegiance to a life where joy isn't financed, where the best parts of your day happen in rooms you actually use, around tables that can survive mistakes, with people who don't care what badge is on your keys because they showed up for you, not your car. One more test I use before any large purchase. Can I explain the total cost in a paragraph, and do I like the person I become while owning this? Total cost includes money, time, maintenance, storage, upgrades, and attention. The owning this test is even more revealing. Some objects turn you into a steward, others turn you into a manager of appearances. I choose stewardship. It's cheaper, it's kinder to my future, and it makes my days feel like mine. If I can't pass those tests, I walk away, even if I have the money, especially if I have the money. A final story, because stories are how we remember. A mentor of mine could have bought any watch he wanted. He wore a simple one that kept time and carried a tiny scratch from his kid's first bike crash. He said the scratch was his favorite part. He said, "It means I was there. It means the watch does its job, which is not to be perfect, it's to be with me." That is the energy I want for everything I purchase. Not perfect, with me. Not a protected shrine, a partner. When you choose partners over props, money starts compounding in your accounts and in your days. The things you wouldn't buy become the choices you're proud of years later. If you try this for a month, the change won't go viral. No one will stop you on the street to congratulate your used car, your right-sized kitchen, your sturdy table, or your canceled bundle of someday. But your Fridays will grow a new texture. Boring. Boring is what wealth feels like indoors. It's a weekly refill that lands and feels like nothing because the plan already knows what to do. It's a sleep fund with a name that lowers your shoulders. It's ownership that accumulates while you make dinner from a freezer pantry instead of paying for mood delivery. And it's the quiet knowledge that you are hard to sell to and easy to satisfy, which is a very rich way to live, even if you have the money to buy everything on this list.